There are 3 questions that will be asked of your family after a parent is diagnosed. They will come from people who seem trustworthy, a hospital financial counselor, a helpful advisor, sometimes, hardest of all, from within your own family. And if you answer them the wrong way, quickly, honestly, without understanding what is really being asked, you can cost your family everything your parents spent a lifetime building. Even from your own family, there are 3 questions you should never answer without stopping first. If you are the one who handles things for your parents, the one people turn to when the diagnosis comes, this video is for you. In the next 25 minutes, I am going to tell you what those 3 questions are, why they are so dangerous, and exactly what to say instead. My name is not important. What matters is that when these questions come, and they will come, you will recognize them, and you will not be caught off guard. Let me set the scene, because these questions never arrive in a vacuum. They arrive in the hardest week of your life. A parent has just been diagnosed, dementia, a stroke, a terminal illness. The family is reeling. And into that fog of grief and fear, practical questions start arriving about money, about the house, about who will handle what. The questions seem reasonable, they seem urgent, and that is exactly what makes them dangerous. Because decisions made in those first raw weeks out of panic and love and exhaustion are the decisions families regret for years afterward. So let me arm you. Here are the 3 questions, why each one is a trap, and what to do instead. The first question is this: should we just put the house in your name now? It sounds like the responsible thing. A parent has been diagnosed, everyone senses the clock is ticking, and someone, a sibling, an advisor, sometimes the parent themselves, suggest transferring the house into the children's names right away, to protect it, to get ahead of things. Do not answer yes to this question in the moment. Here is why. Transferring a home out of a parent's name is one of the most consequential financial moves a family can make, and done wrong, it is catastrophic. If your parent may need Medicaid to pay for care within 5 years, that transfer can trigger the Medicaid look-back penalty, a period of months or even years during which Medicaid will pay nothing, and the family is left covering nursing, home bills that can run past $200,000. The house you transferred to protect becomes the asset you are forced to sell to cover the penalty you triggered. And there is more. When you transfer a home during a parent's lifetime, the children lose what is called the stepped-up basis, which can saddle them with a capital gains tax bill of tens of thousands of dollars when they eventually sell. A move meant to protect the family instead creates a Medicaid penalty and a tax bill at the same time. So what do you say instead? You say, that is an important decision and we are going to talk to an elder law attorney before we do anything with the house. There is very often a right way to protect the home, a ladybird deed or another tool suited to your state that accomplishes everything the transfer was meant to do, without the penalty and without the tax bomb. But it has to be done correctly. The answer is never to sign the house over in a panic the week after a diagnosis. The second question is this: can you just be added to mom's bank accounts? Again, it sounds practical. Someone needs to be able to pay mom's bills, manage her money, handle the logistics. So the suggestion comes, just add a child as a joint owner on the bank accounts. Quick, easy, done at the bank in 20 minutes. Stop before you answer this one too. Adding a child as a joint owner of a bank account creates a cascade of problems most families never see coming. First, that money now legally belongs, in part, to the child, which means it is exposed to that child's creditors, that child's divorce, that child's lawsuits. If the daughter added to mom's account gets divorced, mom's savings can become part of that divorce. Second, joint ownership can interfere with Medicaid eligibility and create confusion about whose money is whose during the look-back review. And third, it can quietly override the parent's will because jointly owned accounts typically pass directly to the surviving joint owner, cutting out the other siblings entirely and igniting exactly the kind of family war that destroys relationships forever. What do you say instead? You say, instead of joint accounts, we should set up a proper power of attorney. A durable power of attorney lets you manage your parents' finances and pay their bills without making you a legal owner of their money. It accomplishes the practical goal: someone can handle the money without the creditor, exposure, the Medicaid problems, or the inheritance chaos. It is the tool built for exactly this purpose, and the joint account is not. The third question is the hardest, because it usually comes from inside the family, and it sounds like love. We don't need to spend money on lawyers and planning, we can just handle this ourselves, right? This is the most expensive question of all, and the most human. Money is tight, everyone is stressed, and spending a few hundred or a few $1,000s on an elder law attorney feels like a luxury the family cannot afford. Someone always says it. Let's not waste money on lawyers, we'll figure it out. Here is the truth. Trying to handle Medicaid planning, asset protection, and long-term care decisions without expert guidance is where families lose the most money. Not to a scam, not to a villain. To simple, honest mistakes, a wrong transfer, a missed exemption, a botched application, a spend down that never needed to happen. The families who just handle it themselves routinely lose tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars that a few $100s of proper advice would have protected. The elder law attorney is not the expense. The elder law attorney is what prevents the expense. What do you say instead? You say, the planning is not the cost, it is what protects us from the real cost. We are going to get proper advice before we make any big decisions. That single sentence held firm against the pressure to cut corners is often worth more than everything else combined. Let me tell you about a family who answered all three questions wrong, because their story shows how fast it can unravel. The Hendersons were a close family, or so they believed. When their mother Dorothy was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, her 3 adult children gathered at the kitchen table to figure out what to do. The oldest, Patricia, lived nearby and had always handled Mom's affairs. In that first raw week, moving quickly, because it felt responsible, they made 3 decisions. They transferred Dorothy's house into Patricia's name to protect it. They added Patricia as joint owner on Dorothy's bank accounts so she could pay the bills. And they agreed not to waste money on lawyers because they were a close family and could handle it themselves. Within 2 years, all 3 decisions had detonated. When Dorothy needed nursing home care, the house transfer triggered a Medicaid penalty of over a year, more than $100,000 the family had to cover out of pocket. The joint bank accounts meant that when Dorothy passed, the money legally became Patricia's alone, cutting her siblings out entirely, and though Patricia never intended to keep it, the appearance of it, the suspicion, poisoned the relationship. And because no attorney had ever been consulted, none of it had been done in a way that could be undone. Been close for 50 years was shattered, not by malice, but by 3 well-meaning decisions made too fast, in grief, without guidance. Dorothy, who had spent her life holding her family together, would have been heartbroken to see what those innocent choices did. The Hendersons are not unusual. This is the ordinary shape of the disaster, and every piece of it was preventable with a single sentence. Let's not decide anything until we talk to an elder law attorney. Now let me tell you why. These 3 questions are especially dangerous when they come from inside your own family. When a stranger pressures you, your guard is up. But when the pressure comes from a brother, a sister, a spouse, people you love and trust, people who are also grieving, your guard is down. You do not want to seem difficult. You do not want to start a fight in the middle of a crisis. So you go along, you sign, you agree, and months later, when the Medicaid penalty hits or the accounts pass to the wrong person or the savings are gone, the very family bonds you were trying to protect are the ones that shatter. This is not because your family is bad. It is because grief and money together are one of the most dangerous combinations in human life, and almost no one is prepared for it. The way you protect your family is not by refusing to trust them. It is by insisting gently, firmly together that the big decisions wait until you have proper guidance. Let's not decide this yet. Let's ask an expert first. That is not distrust. That is the most loving thing you can say in that room. There is a 4th question I want to add, because it comes up constantly and it is just as dangerous as the first 3. It sounds like this. Should we just start paying the nursing home out of Mom's savings until the money runs out and then apply for Medicaid? Feels logical. The nursing home wants to be paid, Mom has savings, so the family starts writing checks, $10,000 a month, month after month, planning to turn to Medicaid once the money is gone. Stop before you answer this one too. Because spending down a parent's savings directly on the nursing home with no planning is very often the single most expensive way to do it. Every dollar spent that way is a dollar gone. But with proper planning, a significant portion of those same savings can frequently be protected legally while still qualifying for Medicaid. There are legitimate strategies, certain annuities, spousal protections if there is a healthy spouse, exempt purchases, and more. The families who blindly spend down to zero often give away tens of thousands of dollars that the law would have let them keep. What do you say instead? You say, before we spend a single month's savings on the nursing home, we are going to find out what we are actually allowed to protect. That one pause before the spend down begins can save more money than almost any other decision in this entire process. Let me give you the pattern that ties all these questions together so you can recognize the next one even if it is not on this list. Every one of these dangerous questions has three features. It arrives in crisis, when you are least able to think clearly. It asks for a quick, irreversible decision, signing something, moving money, changing ownership. And it feels responsible, even loving, which is what disarms you. Whenever you notice those three features together, crisis, irreversibility, and the feeling that saying yes is the caring thing to do, that is the exact moment to stop and say, not yet, let's get advice first. Irreversible decisions made in crisis are the ones families regret. The single most protective habit you can build is the pause. Nothing about your parents' care or finances is so urgent that it cannot wait for one phone call to someone who knows the rules. Let me put real numbers to why the pause matters so much, because the abstraction of you could lose money does not land until you see it. Imagine a family whose mother has about $200,000 in savings and a paid-off home worth $300,000. Diagnosis comes. In a panic, they do the three things: transfer the house to a daughter, add her to the accounts, and start spending the savings on care while handling everything themselves. Here is the damage. The home transfer, made within the 5-year look-back, triggers a penalty. At roughly $10,000 a month in care costs, transferring a $300,000 home can create a penalty period stretching well beyond 2 years, during which Medicaid pays nothing and the family owes the full cost out of pocket. Meanwhile, the $200,000 in savings gets spent down with no planning, when a large share of it could likely have been protected, and the capital gains problem on the transferred house waits quietly to add a tax bill on top. Now imagine the same family, but with one difference. Before doing anything, they spend $400 on an elder law consultation. The attorney uses a ladybird deed instead of an outright transfer, protecting the home with no penalty and no capital gains problem. She sets up a power of attorney instead of joint accounts. She identifies which savings can be protected and how to qualify for Medicaid without the needless spend down. The difference between these two versions of the same family, facing the same diagnosis with the same assets, can easily exceed $200,000. Same diagnosis. The only variable is whether they pause to get advice before answering the questions. That is how much the pause is worth. Here is what to do when the diagnosis comes and the questions start. First, agree as a family out loud that no major financial or legal decision will be made until you have spoken with an elder law attorney. Make it a rule everyone commits to, so that when the pressure comes, no single person has to stand against the others alone. Second, get a durable power of attorney and the basic legal documents in place properly, with guidance, not by patching things together at the bank. Third, do not touch the house, do not move the money, and do not spend down savings until someone who understands Medicaid has looked at your specific situation. Fourth, call your local area agency on aging and an elder law attorney early, not after a mistake, but before the first big decision. Let me leave you with one more thought about why this is so hard and why you should be gentle with yourself and your family when these questions come. Nobody teaches us how to do this. We are not raised knowing about look-back periods and powers of attorney and Medicaid penalties. We learn about them, if we ever do, in the middle of the worst crisis of our lives, when a parent is failing, when everyone is frightened, when the grief is fresh, and into that moment come questions that demand fast answers from people who love each other but have no idea what they are doing. Of course, families make mistakes. The system almost guarantees it. That is exactly why the pause is such a gift. When you say, let's wait and get advice before we decide, you are not slowing your family down. You are giving everyone permission to stop guessing, to stop pretending they know the answers, to hand the hardest questions to someone who does this every day. You are taking the weight off your own shoulders and your siblings' shoulders. Far from being the difficult one in the room, you become the person who protected everyone, including the relationships that matter more than any amount of money. The diagnosis is the moment the questions begin. Now you know what they are. When someone asks whether to sign over the house, whether to add you to the accounts, whether you can just handle it all yourselves, you will recognize the trap, and you will know the answer. Not yet. Let's get advice first. If this helped you, send it to your siblings before you need it, because these questions are far easier to handle when the whole family has already agreed how to answer them. And watch my video on the ladybird deed next, because the right way to protect the home is where all of this begins. You handle everything. Let me help you handle this. Stay sharp, stay protected, and protect the people who spent their lives protecting you.